Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all so much for obeying the COVID rules so well. I'm very surprised that the elder generation have managed to stick to their tables, mainly. I haven't had to get the super soakers out. We're going to kick off with a round of normally, an MC wouldn't make a speech, and today is no exception. I will be shortly announcing for the father of the bride to take the microphone, followed by Edward as groom, and then Tim Galloway as best man. And without further ado, I will hand over to the father of the bride, Owen Elliott.
That's the only ovation I've ever had in my life. And there's only one person who knows how this is going to go, and that's God. So you'll have to bear with us both. But the best things in life, they say, are worth waiting for. And this beautiful young couple have waited 14 months longer than they wanted to become Mrs. and Mrs. Edward Ford. So bride and groom, John and Claire Ford, Charles and Katie Ford, family, friends, ladies and gentlemen, and I may say fellow young farmers, because I'm a deputy president of the National Federation of Young Farmers. And we are here today, of course, because the Young Farmers Movement is the best managed bureau in the country. Today's marquee, as the Minister said earlier on today, is bathed in the flags of two nations. The best definition I heard of the working relationship between the English and Welsh came from a very gifted English and British Lions scrum half called Dickie Jeeps. He said the relationship between the English and Welsh is based on trust and understanding. They don't trust us and we can't understand them. But we have a bride and groom who have spent the last at least 6 years of their lives given an enormous amount of time to ensure that young people in England and Wales begin to trust and understand each other more. Looking at this audience while I've enjoyed my meal, I can see a great many of you who have sat and listened to a great many toasts of the bride and groom, which at this moment gives me a great affinity with Elizabeth Taylor's 8th husband on his wedding night. I know what to do, but how the hell do I make it interesting? Public speaking is never easy. There are only two things that can assist you. One is the quality of your subject matter, and the other is the fact that your audience could be inebriated. I couldn't have a better subject matter, and I congratulate all of you on the effort you've made for the last hour. Laura today and her bridesmaids make the Magnificent Seven. And if you add Katie Hall, Serena, Mims and Kath, you have an excellent cast for a remake of The Wild Bunch. And I can assure you they are a wild bunch when they're together. You never know how important a moment is until it becomes a treasured memory. So what I'd like to do with you now is share a few treasured memories of the woman you know as Laura Ford and the girl I've known all my life as Laura Elliott. The exciting life that I was about to lead started when she was 50 months old. We used to put her to bed in a large cot in our bedroom. Some nights she'd settle fine, other nights she'd shout for attention. One night Audrey said, "Can you go up and settle her?" And I crept upstairs quietly and just peeped around the door frame. She had her back facing to me as she had her two hands on the rail of the cot, and she was rattling the cot as fast as she could and shouting. But then she suddenly stopped, and then she lifted herself up the side of the cot, kicked her two legs over the side, dropped to the floor and ran around the bed. Then she saw me and she stopped, and then she started that lovely, incredible, infectious laugh she's got, and I knew from that moment on life was going to be interesting. And I had to buy a single bed 3 months before I thought I would have to. She's oldest friend is Hannah, who was chief bridesmaid today, and Hannah have been friends since they were duds. And when Hannah was 5-year-old, she was diagnosed as an insulin-dependent diabetic. And Laura and Auntie Janet, as she's known in our family, Hannah's mum, had conversations about what Hannah was going to have to go through and what would have to be done to ensure Hannah's safety. And one day in class in school, a 5 or 6-year-old, suddenly Hannah started to slip into a hypoglycemic attack. The teacher didn't know what to do, and she admitted after that she totally froze. But because she talked to Auntie Janet, Laura knew. So one young boy was dispatched to the canteen for a spoonful of sugar, and another one was dispatched for a glass of orange juice, and within a few minutes Hannah was fine. It's amazing the knock-on effect of those little instances, because several years later I was a governor of the small school, and the headmaster told me because of that incident they had then made sure that the next inset training day was a district nurse in to tell teaching staff how to deal with problems. So it's amazing how things just touch. I was also there when I took her to school to get her GCSE results. She'd passed Maths A-level with several other contenders in this room a year early, but I was leaning on the car waiting for her to come out, and she came out, opened the envelope. It had 5 grade A's, 2 grade B's and 2 grade C's. And she turned to me and she said, "Imagine, Dad, what I could have got if I'd done any revision." A year later, the same conversation with AS levels. She then chose to go to Northumbria University to study. And it was an eventful time. In Northumberland, she found out she was allergic to prawn crackers and has carried an EpiPen ever since. She snapped her cruciate ligaments in her left leg playing rugby, but she did gain a 2-1 degree in history. When she came home, I thought then it would be the start of a career. But no, I was told by Audrey, who is the conveyor of all information in our family, like a great many mothers are, that Laura wasn't starting her career. She wanted to go the following year to New Zealand to see the Rugby World Cup and do a bit of travelling in Australia and to the Philippines. And that's exactly what happened. She spent a year making pizzas in Asda just for the money, and she went off to New Zealand. She'd already been there with us on a Lions tour. She had bungee jumped off Cowra Bridge. I understand she then skydived over Lake Taupo. But she was slightly unwell and had to spend time in hospital, but they released her and said, "Go now and rest." But of course she'd gone with an Irish girl, Karen, who was a lovely girl, but the only problem was she didn't drive. So Laura did all the driving. And within half an hour of being released from hospital, she was heading down the South Island of New Zealand to catch the next Wales game. And that's exactly what has been a major influence on life. She loves rugby, as Ed has found out. And when you watch a game of rugby with Laura, it is a spectacular sport in itself. She knows every player. She knows the strengths and weaknesses of every player. She will criticise the players if they make mistakes. And then the tour de force is her interpretation of the IQ and the fatherhood of the referee. At the same time, she's always been committed to IFC. And when she was in her last year in Newcastle, I was told by Audrey one night that we were driving to Bristol. And it's not a short journey from Gower. I said, "Why are we going to Bristol?" And she said, "Laura's flying in." I said, "Isn't she well?" No, she's bought a ticket for the club dinner." So we were going to Bristol to pick it up. And then, of course, 2 days later, we were going back to Bristol for her to fly back to Newcastle again. With Young Farmers has been a wonderful train for her qualities and her abilities. And as a chairman, she was club chairman of Gower, county chairman, of Glamorgan, the Welsh Federation Chairman, and of course a National Vice Chairman. She was voted as Senior Member of the Year for Glamorgan County, for the Wales Federation and National Federation. At this time she was also awarded the Lord Lieutenant of West Glamorgan's Award for services to young people in the voluntary sector. And because of her abilities, she was asked to represent Wales in the Commonwealth Youth Parliament in Vancouver Island in Canada for a week, where she was coached by people how to be a politician. I don't think Laura will ever be a politician because she can't lie. The last thing was, of course, she was then involved for 12 months in setting up the working party that now created a Wales Youth Parliament in our Welsh Assembly in Cardiff. It is, of course, Young Farmers that brings us here today, and I haven't said a great deal at all yet about Ed. I've left that to his best man Tim, because I didn't want to cross any ground that was his territory. But the lovely thing about Ed was that we met him before Laura and he were an item. He was National Chairman and travelling to Pembrokeshire for a county rally. And as the brotherhood and sisterhood of Young Farmers is, Laura was on National Council, so he said, can I stop off on the way to have a break and then go in the morning? And that's exactly what he did. And when we arrived, we found him to be an exceptionally nice young man. And I am saying that again, we found him to be an exceptionally nice young man. I have to be fair, Ed, you are by far the best looking suitor that Laura's ever brought to Little Hills Farm. The fact that you're the only suitor she's ever brought. Only slightly diminishes her compliment. He is a people-centred person. He was an exceptional national chairman of YFC, whilst also being, I will tell you, a great ambassador for the Ford family. And I'd like to extend later my thanks to them. Think about Ed's love of horses. The young couple got married and they decided to leave the wedding reception in a horse and trap. They'd been going for a couple of minutes and a crisp packet rattled in the hedge. The horse shied and stopped. The groom got out, walked round, slapped the horse in the front of the nose and said, that's your first warning. Got in, they'd gone another 20 yards, a cow coughed in the field, horse shot, shied. The groom got out, walked round, slapped it on the nose, said, that's your second warning. Anyway, they'd only gone another 200 yards and a bird suddenly flew out of the hedge and the horse stopped and shied. So the bridegroom got out, walked around, took out a gun, shot the horse. So he went back to help his wife out of the trap, and as her feet touched the horse, she was complaining bitterly about his behaviour. Ed, advice, he smacked her on the bottom and he said, that's your first warning. And then of course Laura and Ed became a couple. I'm sorry, this is not the toast, I'm just drying up. Then of course they became a couple, and they were travelling back and forth to Essex and back to Gower. It's a long way, as Audrey and I have found out. And then she came to stay for short weekends. And as a parent, you always worry about a child, and a father always worries about a daughter, I can assure you that. But one weekend she wasn't very well, and we were delighted to hear that Ed had gone to hospital. He'd sat by the bedside all night, and when she was told in the morning, you'll be allowed to go home in the afternoon, then he said, right, Law, I'll go home for a shower now and a couple of hours kept, and I'll come back and fetch you. But when she was brought out of hospital, Claire Ford made sure that she was there to meet her. And Claire said, Laura, whatever you want to happen now will happen. If you want to stay in Essex, we'll look after you the best way we can. if you want to go home to Wales, I will drive you home to Wales and I will catch a train back.
She didn't know how far it was.
I was hoping you'd manage to remain silent, John. What I'd like to say is that at that moment, Audrey and I knew that Laura was becoming part of a lovely family that cared. And I thank you, Claire, for that, because it's made us confident for the last 2 years that our daughter would be looked after. I'd like to thank the Fords as well, because not only have you chosen to support Laura, but you've now chosen to support my son, Will.
Chosen.
He is thoroughly enjoying his work experience at Hilditch Farms. And I must compliment the Ford family on their training program, because I was very impressed when I found out that he'd been trained how to park a tractor on its side in a ditch.
It's harder than it looks, mate.
But I am informed that he has joined some elite company. John.
Not me.
Charles. Somebody's got to own up. In our family, we are very lucky. We have a trove of treasures. And those trove of treasures are our family friends and family members. And all of them have had an influence in forming the young woman who you watch today become Mrs. Edward Ford. And I'd like to thank them publicly for their contribution to the development of both our children, because funnily enough, at our age now, we still actually like them and respect them and treasure them for the people they are. The last 12 months, I think, has taught us that it's what you bring to the table of life that matters and not what you take from it. And I think I can compliment Mr. and Mrs. Edward Ford as leaders of the YFC movement in their own way for already bringing more to the table of life than most people have the opportunity to. Today in church, for one of the few times in your life, 3 things happened at the same time. When the minister said, "I now pronounce you man and wife," you indeed became Mr. and Mrs. Edward Ford. At the same moment, you created 2 fathers-in-law, but far more significantly, at the same time, you created 2 mothers-in-law. I have to thank my mother-in-law for introducing me to religion, because I had no idea what hell was till I met my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law is sitting over there. She is an 86-year-old gem. If you want one of the... Sorry. Sorry, Mum, you look a lot younger. She is a gem. And there were 2 people, I thank my trove of treasures, but it's the 2 grandmothers in her life who set up the foundation. She's lucky still to have one. And I am lucky to have Dilys Thomas as my mother-in-law. And for the second time in my life, she's allowed me to say that one-liner, which you all enjoy. To you both, as you start in your life, I'd like to quote Martin Luther King. He said, "God does not judge us by the separate incidents or the separate mistakes we make, but by the total part of our lives." I know as a team you are going to be quite formidable in contributing to the progress and enjoyment of others and the professional field that you will both contribute to. As I've spoken, I'm looking at Elms Farm, and it's a beautiful spate. And I think Elm's Farm has been sitting here for 200 years waiting for our bride and groom. Because if you take the letters ELMS, from now on they'll stand for Edward and Laura's Matrimonial Sanctuary. I just want to say, Ed and Laura, we love you both.
We'll need both of these. It's going to be a long one. Anyone wants a toilet break, go now. Owen, I'm going to struggle to follow that. You've used up all of your time and mine, so I shall have to keep this brief. Firstly, a few announcements. Well, where do I start? I've written all these down in the past 10 minutes. So, number one, happy birthday for yesterday to my favourite Irish cousin, Anna Syme. And thank you for travelling over to be with us today. Table arrangements. I will come to the flower ladies later. But please do take the table arrangements home with you if you feel you have contributed enough to this wedding. I did see Bill Boone slipping off early yesterday, so maybe don't take one, Bill Boone. There she is. For you white trouser farmers in the room who farm from your offices or whatever, that's in fact brome out there, not black grass in that field of wheat. And for the purpose of this speech, today is the 2nd of the 5th, 2020. Finally, it's been a manic 10 days organising this wedding, and I think we've done an all right job at pulling it together. But there has been one colossal cock up, and I do apologise. Table oak. Yes, there we are. 2 weeks ago there were 30 people at this wedding. There's now over 100. So there was always going to be a mistake. We have the High Sheriff of Essex on the table. We have a DL and a Laird. And we have Chris Philpott. I mean, quite what he is doing on that table, I don't know. And I apologise to everyone on that table for that mistake. Ladies and gentlemen, and for those yet undecided. Although I would say I'm a fairly experienced public speaker, I can assure you I've never done one of these before. You'll need your glasses fully charged and handkerchiefs at the ready. That includes myself. I think I left it down there. Good. On behalf of my wife and I, we would like to welcome you here to help celebrate our special day at Elms Farm. Albeit over a year late, with a few less people than we'd hoped, we are blessed to have our nearest and dearest here with us today. It has been a huge year of highs and lows. It's been a year of huge highs and lows for us all. But actually what matters is you're all here today, we're married, we've got our closest friends here. Put simply, it wouldn't have been the same without you, but by God it would have been cheaper. Unfortunately, it has not been possible to have everyone here today with us. But we know they're here with us in spirit, and our thoughts are with them. They're here in heart. So please, would you all stand and raise a glass to absent friends and family? Absent friends and family. It's the hard bit done. Hannah, Louise, Sarah, Katie and Sian, you all look stunning today. You've been a huge support to Laura over the past 2 years since our engagement, and particularly over the last few days keeping her sane. Last year on our original wedding day, Hannah organised, as only Hannah could, a Zoom wedding call with all the ushers and bridesmaids, which made our original wedding day so special. That said, my brother still does think you're a bit crazy. Hannah, you've done a sterling job organising the hen do back in February last year. From what Laura tells me, Chase Distillery, a previous employee of mine, was a great success. Employer of mine. I remember getting a phone call from Louise just a few days before telling me that the accommodation you were all staying in had flooded. At the time, this was a disaster of biblical proportions. However, little did we know, an exotic food critic from a city called Wuhan had other plans for us that would change all of our lives in the months to come. It never ceases to amaze me how Laura managed to keep up with all of her friends. Friends from home, friends from school, friends from young farmers. It is brilliant to see those friendships still flourishing today, and I'm sure they will continue to grow into the future. Patrick and Annabelle, who have sadly been whisked away, certainly looked the part today, and it was great to have them here with us to share the ceremony with us. The ushers dotted about everywhere. Heading up my usher team, best man Tim. Tim and I first met in a field at a Suffolk Young Farmers party some 10 years ago. Since then, we've had many good times. Young farmers parties, beer festivals, shooting. And over the last few years, strategic business advice over the phone, with phone conversations normally ending, "You must be mad." Tim has always been there when needed, and it's much appreciated. While we're on Tim, I can't get through this without thanking his good wife, Jo. Jo, your support has been invaluable to Laura since she came and made a huge step moving from Wales to Essex a few years ago. Jo, I can't thank you enough. Your friendship has meant the world to Laura. Ushers. I've got at the top of this page, Groomzilla. Ushers, Charles, Will, James and Dave and Hugh. Laura and I would like to thank you for all your help over the past few days and weeks, particularly with the stag do. That was the less said about that, the better. More detail, please. You have all contributed hugely today, and you are the oil that has kept the engine running. I do hope you enjoy your engraved hip flasks, dated 02/05/20. Laura, my beautiful wife, you look incredible today. When we did the dress rehearsal on Thursday, it was all very coordinated, and I thought, well, maybe I can turn around now. And Tim kept telling me in the church earlier that I couldn't turn around because she was still at the door. So I wondered if she was having second thoughts, but apparently she was waiting for the organist. But when I turned around in the church earlier, I think anyone that was looking at me would have said my heart skipped a beat. You look truly incredible today, and I'm punching well above my weight, as everyone keeps telling me. Laura first became aware of me. Laura first became aware of me on my jaunts to Somerset during the floods of 2014. According to a close associate, Laura was at the YFC Centre in Wales with a TV screen on in the background. I appeared on said TV screen doing an interview for the BBC. Laura's behaviour went very odd, much like it does when she has a close encounter with one of the Welsh rugby team. She said, "What a guy, I'd love to meet him one day." One such encounter, one such One such one such encounter with Welsh rugby star was at the Birmingham NFU conference several years ago. I was stood in the queue waiting to get into the nightclub, talking to a fellow delegate. Said delegate was in fact Dan Lydiate of Welsh rugby fame. I had no idea who he was. Dan then saw Laura, who was stood behind me, cut me off, and then started to talk to Laura. Laura went all weak at the knees, ran into the nightclub, never to be seen again for the rest of the night. Our first official date was in Reading, very, very roughly halfway between Essex and Wales. We had a spot of lunch, did the ordinary dating stuff. And after that it was easy because I was chairman of England and Wales Young Farmers and Laura was chairman of Wales, so we kept meeting up. In the early days though, we tried to keep it quiet, but word soon got around and I knew our cover was blown when one day I got a phone call from Sandra, my PA at Young Farmers. My PA! Did you not have a PA? My PA. She was my PA. For the purposes of this talk, she was a PA. And she said to me, PA's pretty annoyed. She said to me, we're trying to save the Federation money. At the next event, we're trying to save the Federation money. Can you please share a room with an officer? Do you mind if you share with Laura? I was like, well, that was it. From the outset, I knew very quickly I was going to be the third wheel in this relationship. Now, I could handle being the third wheel to another person or perhaps a dog, but to a sport, I knew I was going to struggle. Gone were the days when we could go down the pub and watch the rugby in silence. No, rugby for me has become something that has to be watched several times per match, rewound every 2 minutes just to check. In fact, even last year, during lockdown, the England-Wales match in the Six Nations, my parents brought us over to their house for my own protection. This year, however, anyway, moving swiftly on. Over the past year, it's become increasingly clear that we both love to travel. We have holidayed in Rome, Jersey, Porto, Scotland, to name but a few. Each one very different but equally as enjoyable. We have spent many happy hour travelling around the UK to meet friends and family, something that has become very important to us. The honeymoon is something we've both been very incredibly excited about. And she doesn't know this. Travelling to some far-flung part of the world has always been the dream, coupled with the fact my mother always moaned about her incredibly short honeymoon to Jersey. 4 days. So I knew I had to impress. So we are in fact heading to Canada Street in Bath. Laura moving to Essex was huge for both of us. Laura moving away from her friends and family to carve out a new life in a foreign country. But for me, not having to worry every Friday about what service station I was going to stop at on the M4. Membry, Lee Delamere, Cheveley, the list is endless. Reading, no, not Reading. No. In all seriousness, Laura, you moving to Essex has transformed our relationship and has gone from strength to strength. Thank you to everyone for making her feel so welcome. I know Laura is incredibly grateful for all the support she receives. So, I've missed a page. Experience. Asking Laura was always going to be the easy bit. It was Owen I was more worried about. Having eventually got him on his own, having been trying all weekend, I asked the question. He stood up, shook my hand, and said, "Jesus Christ." So I thought that was very odd. Audrey and Laura walked in, and that was that. To be honest, I was a little taken aback by his reaction, but it all became very clear a couple of weeks later when we announced our engagement. Laura's brother Will
I go both ways.
wrote on Facebook, "Well, Mum and Dad, we did it. She's someone else's problem now." So then on to the how, when and where. How was easy, just get on one knee and the rest will just happen. Once you get to that point, there's no going back. When? Owen can't keep secrets for very long, so I knew I had a 2-week window. And the where, well, that was just in a field out the back there. Laura had kept asking me when we were going to get engaged for the past few months, much like Katie and Shanko have been doing for... So I kept telling her, much like Shanko does, every time you keep asking me, it's another month. Following a successful Mothering Sunday lunch here at Elms, we moved into the kitchen for coffee. It was about 3 p.m. I poured myself a whiskey, and as I did, I asked if anyone else would like to join me in one. My mother looked at me and said, "It's 3 p.m. My father looked at me like I had two heads, so I poured a bit more in for good luck. Eventually everyone else left, and off we went to the field. As we exited the yard, it was a beautiful spring afternoon, 18 degrees. Got to the edge of the yard. Katie was quietly being sick in the corner. And I forgotten the ring. Ran back to the house, I had a t-shirt and shorts on. It's like, what am I going to do with this ring? Put my shuffle on. So ran back out, all sweating, and Laura looked at me very oddly, and I said, "Don't want to get cold." Ring bulging out the pocket. Off we marched to the field, and the rest is history. It became very clear walking back from the field that we wanted to keep it under wraps for a few weeks while we got all the details sorted for the big wedding in May 2020. However, parents were to be told immediately. I rang mine first, and true to style and form, John said, "Righto, see you in the morning." Having found the international dialing code, we rang Owen and Audrey. Owen answered, and Laura, struggling to hold herself together, asked if Audrey was there. "No, she's out. I just need to talk to her about the bed." We bought a new bed the week before. She promptly hung up the phone, texted her mother, and said, "Please ring me when you get home." Owen obviously put 2 and 2 together and rang back an hour later with Audrey at his side. So on to the thank yous. Thank you all for travelling here today. It is amazing how far people will come for a free meal and a rubbish speech. These weddings don't just happen. There's been a small army of people here all week putting these together. 10 days ago, we were unsure of how many people we'd have here today. Ramping up from 30 to 112 has been no mean feat, but it wouldn't have been possible without the many tens of people working here over the past few days. Lynn and the flower ladies, the marquee and church look incredible. The bridesmaids, the ladders. The husbands of the flower ladies, the mowing, the broom pushing, the pressure washing, the painting, the digging, the fence erecting, the scrubbing, the weeding, stacking of the fridges, putting up the signs, the list is endless. Hedge hoovering.
Pretty qualified.
Laura and I would like to extend a massive thank you to everyone who has helped pull today off. It simply wouldn't have been possible without you. So thank you. Alice, Christine and her team As ever, the service has been impeccable, and thank you for making it happen. Finally, Laura and I would like to convey our utmost thanks to Audrey, Owen, John and Claire. Today simply wouldn't have been possible without you. It really wouldn't. Over the past few years, your support with our relationship has been unwavering. We have been welcomed into both families with open arms, and we really do appreciate that, so thank you. So anyway, I've royally cocked the speech up.
Do you want to go back to page 4?
We'll go back to page 4. You're all fed up of listening to me rabbit on, so I shall hand over to Tim, the best man, who will, I'm sure, do me justice. But if he references the stag do, just remember, Tim, that you were in bed long before me. Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for the bridesmaids.
The bridesmaids.
The bridesmaids.
I'm not quite as short as he is.
Either look at Joe or don't.
Can everybody hear me? Good. If I can first ask you all to be upstanding.
Again.
And raise a glass to you guys. Well done. You all made the cut. And we are finally here to celebrate Ed and Laura's special day. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been 2 years, 2 months and 26 days since Ed got down on one knee and asked Laura to marry him. We have had 1 pandemic, 3 lockdowns, and today has moved 4 times. However, finally the day has arrived. So it's my pleasure to say good evening and welcome. Before I begin, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce myself. For those who don't know me, I'm Tim. Hi. All good. And I'm Ed's best man. I'd like to thank you all for making it here today. Boris's select group of people chosen to share one of the most highly anticipated days in the farming calendar. I'd like to thank everyone who's pulled together to make today such a success. Everyone looks fantastic. Hannah, Laura, Katie, Sarah, Louise, Sian, Laura's bridesmaids. There's loads of you. You look absolutely stunning. Don't worry, I have a wife and child, I can say that. And Laura, wow. Ed, I do hope you realise how much you're punching here, yeah? So although we're here for the glamorous couple, I'm specifically here to talk about one person. The man, the myth, the legend, that is Ed Ford. So most of you probably know that Ed's school years were somewhat checkered. 2 suspensions, 1 exclusion and a small fire would suggest that school and Ed weren't drawn together. And it would often cause confusion for Charles as to why Ed always started his summer holidays 6 months early at Christmas. After school, he moved to Milton Abbey, where it became apparent he had more of an aptitude for land-based. projects such as pheasant pen building and fencing. After that, Ed came back to Childerditch after a brief stint at Harper Adams to make his mark on the farm. Enter scene, Essex Young Farmers. Woo! Yes. Whoever made that noise. And it was around this time I met Ed at a Suffolk Young Farmers party. The plan was to camp up there, and I had driven up there with the Bosworths and the Schweers for a night of planned frivolity. While setting up digs for the night, I noticed this chap walking over with the strangest of strides, swinging his arms and bopping his head, with Ollie in tow. I turned to Emma and asked, "Who on earth is this bloke?" To which she asked, "Oh, that's Ed Ford." "Ed Ford," I replied. "Do you not know Ed Ford?" I looked at her, perplexed, but before I could say anything, he held out an outstretched hand and boomed at me. "Do you not know who I am?" Oh dear. Ed was drawn to young farmers like a bee to honey or a fat kid to cake. This was an organisation that appealed to him in a way that nothing else had. So he joined Chelmsford Young Farmers in 2008, leading on to him becoming chairman in 2012. He was a pivotal member at Chelmsford and Essex, getting heavily involved in the Young Farmers show. He was personality in 2010, I remember that, and took part in endless charity events. Ed was living and breathing Young Farmers and became county chairman in 2015. Before Ed decided to take on Young Farmers, however, he first thought he'd start on the West Country by becoming the face of Forage Aid. Oh, God. And like a modern-day Moses, he would part the water to ensure flood-stricken farmers had enough forage to feed their livestock. It was quite inspirational, to be honest. He still is a hero. It is Ed. Within 9 years of joining Young Farmers, he deservedly made his way up to national chairman, the king of Young Farmers. Which is when the beautiful Laura entered the scene. I must admit, we never thought we'd see the day where Ed would love something more than Young Farmers. Or could it just be he got to the age limit? Ed's enthusiasm for life and everything he does is something to behold. He immerses himself in everything he does, giving nothing less than 100%. However, with Laura by his side, possibilities do actually seem endless. Watching these two grow and flourish has been a pleasure and a privilege. They are absolutely perfect and complement each other in so many ways. So I'd like to finish up with some advice. Ed, first thing, set the ground rules. And then do everything she says. So, finally, if I can all ask you to be upstanding. All right, you don't have to. Charge and raise your glasses to the new Mr. and Mrs. Ford. If I could drop this mic, I would.